Hello and welcome to the official Scottish Rugby podcast. I'm joined today by Dominic McKay, Scottish Rugby's Chief Operating Officer. I am donning the journalist cap and quizzing him on all subjects that you have sent in via Facebook, Twitter and email. Things that affect our game, things that affect the on-field and off-field activities. Welcome Dominic. We're sitting on the day of the Georgia Test match at home. Over 50,000 tickets sold. How pleased are you with that, considering within 75 miles of Edinburgh there's two other big sporting events happening?
Afternoon, Al. Yeah, we're delighted. I mean, we've had 15 sellouts in a row. So if you're going to lose our records and stop selling out games, to do it tonight against Georgia with over 50,000, well over 50,000 people having snapped up tickets is a pretty nice way for that run to finish. I think since we started our run, we've over 1 million people coming through the turnstiles. And that's an enormous credit to the staff at BT Murrayfield, especially the supporters that have come out in incredible numbers. So we're really proud. We've set a big benchmark for us to work towards over the next few years. But yeah, tonight will be special, I'm sure.
As you say, it's a big moment to have so many people with their eyes on Scottish rugby. That's people coming to the stadium, but also people watching at home now. One issue there has been around Premier Sports and some of the quality of the streaming. We've had a few questions in talking about the fact that they've not been able to watch, and a lot of people ended up watching it from Georgia's Facebook feed last week. Is that part of a conversation that you're in, and can you see that changing?
So a couple of things there. We expect the highest quality whenever Scottish rugby supporters watch our games. So we were disappointed that there were some issues last week. I understand they're being dealt with for this evening. The wider point is that broadcasters and broadcast investment's really important to our game. So we're really pleased and proud actually to bring Premier Sports into our wider family of broadcasters. They've been successfully broadcasting the Pro 14 most recently. So they've expanded into international rugby, which has been great. And importantly, their investment, and it's a significant investment that goes into Scottish rugby, allows us to reinvest into all areas of the game across Scotland. So whilst we recognise that going to a pay TV option can be challenging for supporters, it's part and parcel of developing our sport and investing in our sport. Many others have been doing it for many years, so it's something we understand, but we recognise that it comes with some challenge.
How do you get the balance there, Dominic, between the free to view and the larger viewing figures and inspiring the next generation and bringing money into the game that can then be redistributed, as you talked about?
Yeah, so it's a really good point. So we've got to always weigh up the pay TV options versus the reach and of the audience for a national broadcaster or for a free-to-air broadcaster. So we insisted as part of the deal with Premier that they also made the game available on their free platform, also Free Sport. So that was very important for us to make sure that there was still the ability for people to watch those games, perhaps not live, but to watch those games in their entirety on a free platform. The broadcast market is incredible at the moment. It's going through an enormous change, both in terms of pay TV, but also in terms of OTT, this over-the-top programming. So the way in which we've traditionally watched our sport and watched our rugby is changing before our eyes. And Scottish Rugby, I think, has been in the middle of doing some great innovations with broadcasters, but we have to make sure that we strike a balance between driving revenue, which is important to grow the game, but equally giving an opportunity for young boys and girls and people from all ages to enjoy the rugby. So it's been great that we've had the Six Nations remain on terrestrial TV with ITV and BBC in the UK, but that's something that we keep under constant review.
So Don, from what you're saying there, is there potential that the Six Nations, the most viewed tournament in the world, could potentially go behind the paywall and become a pay-per-view tournament?
Well, I think the way that we're all consuming our content now is changing before our eyes, whether that's through people like Netflix or Amazon or even some of the OTT platforms. So I think we are looking, as Six Nations and all rights owners, whether that's Scottish rugby events, at what the market's going to look like over the next sort of few years. So there's definitely change coming. We're seeing that already in some of the stuff we're doing with Scottish rugby and some of our content. We're seeing that with some of the content we're doing with Pro 14. So there's changes afoot, but it's a constant balance to be struck because we recognise the importance of the Six Nations as an appointment to view and also a moment in time where nations in the UK in particular just stop to watch the Calcutta Cup match or stop to watch the Wales-England game. And the part of the reason why they stop to watch is because everyone has access to that content. So whilst we want to make sure that we drive the right value into all the competitions, we need to balance up against the importance of that moment of resonance across the nation. But it's a big debate that will keep raging for a little bit longer. But the broadcasting market is changing, so I wouldn't be surprised if changes happen.
And would you look to cricket and the harm that seems to have been done to grassroots cricket by the fact that they've taken their game behind that pay-per-view wall, and less people are watching the game, less people are picking the bat up to play the game? Is that a danger that could come into rugby?
Very much so. So we're looking at all the different sports and all those other sort of activities that are comparable with ours to make sure that we make the right decisions, both from a business perspective, but also important from an audience point of view. And uniquely, we're governing bodies that own the Six Nations. We're governing bodies that own the Pro 14. So whilst we have to think like a business, we also have to think about developing the long term of the game. So it's a constant battle and constant balance set against that changing broadcaster environment. I think what we're super pleased about is the number of people that are watching our sport now, both in the UK but also internationally. Our international numbers for Scotland are off the scale. We've never experienced such a growth in our international television audience for Scotland games. And that's something which we're able to capitalise on from our globalisation strategy, where we work with supporters, we work with people that are interested in Scottish rugby based in Hong Kong or based in America or based in Australia. So that the reach of rugby has never been stronger. And that means that there's people that are interested in investing in rugby from a broadcasting point of view who perhaps previously haven't really showed that great interest. And the World Cup that's coming up will be the most incredible showcase for our sport. And the television viewing figures around the Japan World Cup, I fully expect to be incredible.
You mentioned OTT and different ways of consumers watching the game. We'll see that in our Super 6 competition. We're streaming it live on Scottish Rugby TV, but also on the BBC's online service, as well as the final being shown on BBC Scotland. You must be delighted that so many people will be able to watch what will be an exciting tournament.
Yeah, so I was just saying a moment ago, I mean, the broadcasting world is changing before our eyes. And as a result of that, the way in which we all consume our sport and our television is totally different. I mean, who would have thought that the power of Netflix and Amazon was so significant even 5 or 6 years ago? So we're having to think differently about where we place our television sort of products. So the Super 6 is a great example of that. Not only will it be live on Scottish Rugby TV, which is a fantastic channel, I would commend to anybody, but in addition to that, it's going to be live on BBC Sport online, which is fantastic. And also the final will be on BBC along with Scottish Rugby TV. So we're giving different touch points for people to consume those particular games. So every weekend there'll be a game, and a Sunday afternoon I think it is, live on all those platforms. So it'll be fantastic. It'll very much have a strong club focus and a club flavour to it, but it'll be showcasing the best of that sort of layer just under the professional clubs of Glasgow and Edinburgh. So really proud with the quality of the product, and it will be an exciting season, which will culminate with that cross-border competition between the best of the Scottish Super 6 teams and the Welsh teams as well.
We've seen some rebranding going on in the Super 6. We have the Southern Knights, the Ayrshire Bulls. How important is it that the locality around these new franchises get behind and support what will be a great tournament? But how much of the success will be determined by the amount of people who are coming through the gates as well? It's
a good point, actually. So whilst the tournament kicks off, running a tournament can be the easy part. The hard part is making sure that the clubs are connected with the communities in which they operate, the supporters are coming out, the hospitality is back in the club. So I know all the clubs are working really hard just now behind the scenes to deepen and develop their new brands. I come from the West Coast, so I've been really interested to see what's happening with the Ayrshire Bulls, which the team down there reminded me that they're now delivering players to the national team, the World Cup squad. So Gordy Reid's made himself very, very famous in the West Coast. So those clubs, I think, will develop their identity. They'll develop a great following. And what we want to do from the centre is make sure that the competition is marketed and promoted effectively. And what better way to do that than live in Scottish Rugby TV and live on the BBC? So it's fantastic that everyone's signed up to that.
So well over 100,000 people coming through the turnstiles for these two summer tests, and numbers will go up again for the coming Six Nations. But one issue that's come up is the transport to and from. Now, Scottish Rugby always encourage people to use public transport. But ScotRail have had their challenges over the last few weeks. What message can you give to our fans, and how closely are we working with ScotRail to try and make sure that they don't happen again?
Yeah, so we are really disappointed and frustrated at the experience that some of our customers had heading back from BT Murrayfield when they were watching the France game. So we've spoken with the chief exec of ScotRail to express our disappointment and express our fans' disappointment directly to them, because we expect, as part of our experience on a match day, that you can come, you have a wonderful time, you get home safely and securely. And we were disappointed as anyone would have been on the challenge that they had. Notwithstanding, the festival was finishing up and it was a busy evening for sure. I think there's a little bit more work that they need to be doing, and we're in dialogue with them to encourage them to do the things that we think they need to do to make sure that the experience from point to point, from home to home, is as good as it possibly can be. And we're encouraging people to come by public transport because we want them to come here and relax, let their hair down, maybe have a drink, have a beer, have a good day out with the family. And to do that, you need to make sure the infrastructure is as good as it can be. And there's more work clearly for ScotRail to do in that regard.
So you mentioned infrastructure for ScotRail, infrastructure at BT Murrayfield. One question we've had in from Laura Sandilands is talking around some of the issues there is at BT Murrayfield for her as a female supporter, specifically around the fact that the queues for ladies' toilets can take 20 minutes. She can miss 20 minutes of a game that she's paid her money to come and see. Are changes in being put in place to make sure that the queues are cut right back?
Yep, so whilst we are proud to have had 15 sellouts back to back and another 55,000 or so coming in tonight, we are always investing in the stadium because it's absolutely vital that we give the best possible experience to everyone that comes here, whether it's families or whether it's females or whether it's males. Everyone has a good experience, and we've got more work to do with regards to improving and developing our toilet infrastructure. We're investing in another 100 female toilets around the stadium over the coming months, and that's just a constant work for us to do. We must do more in this regard. Historically, just by way of background, the stadium was built back in '94 with 80% males in mind in terms of the way the toilets were structured. So we've got some historic problems that we're having to deal with, and we're not blessed with the ease of doing those without significant change to the structure of the stadium. So over the last couple of years, we've made some good progress. We've brought in some additional toilet infrastructure, but there's more for us to do, and we absolutely respect the fact that we need to keep working on that, and that's something that we're motivated to do.
The challenges, as you rightly say, need fixed, but you must be pleased with the changing demographic then. It shows that a new audience is coming to watch Scottish rugby as well. Yeah,
so we started probably on that journey about maybe 6 years ago. We went probably pretty aggressive in deliberately targeting females and families because we felt that was a demographic that was being under-catered for by rugby in Scotland. And we had some quite provocative campaigns. I remember big billboards with some of the team with their tops off, looking wonderful. I'm not sure you featured in that particular campaign, to be honest. Some of the players did.
I see where we're going.
And as part of that was us not just having that sort of fun billboard campaign, but it was also us saying we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that really resonated, I think, with a wider support. And as part of that, we've tried to, and the team have done an incredible job innovating around our marketing, telling our story in a way that our supporters, be it male or female, young or old, really enjoy receiving that story. And that's evidenced, I think, by the number of people that are coming out. We've got the highest proportion, I think, of females coming to our games now than at any point in our history. We've got the highest proportion of children coming to our games at any point in our history, and that's fantastic. And we think we're in safe hands and good hands now for the years to come because people are hopefully going to remain Scottish rugby supporters for the remainder of their life. And our challenge, I guess, as the behind-the-scenes team is to make sure that we surprise and delight them so that every time they come to Murrayfield, they have a great experience. And that's something we're super motivated to make sure we keep delivering for them.
Before we go on and talk around infrastructure, stadium changes at our professional clubs, it's worth noting that last week we did mention the fact that we had the Spice Girls, a sellout, Liverpool game, a sellout. Is that something you're looking to do more of? Bring more people in to use this stadium and I suppose show it off and for all it can do to the rest of the world?
Yes, I suppose it's 17 sellouts in a row, really,
17,
when you include Liverpool and the Spice Girls. In fact, it's 18 because we sold out, I think, the Hearts Celtic game, which was a semi-final of the Cup last year as well. So we're in a great place and we've got an incredible stadium. We've got the best stadium in Scotland, I would argue, amongst the best stadiums in Europe, not just because of the stadium itself, but because of the infrastructure. And it was lovely to have Liverpool here, lovely to sell it out. It was very kind of Carlo Ancelotti and Jurgen Klopp to describe this as being an incredible venue that would be befitting to host the Champions League. So it's whenever we get an opportunity to show it off to a new audience, whether it's football supporters or whether it's football managers or concert promoters, they love coming here. So we're really, really proud of what we've got here. And we're always in the market for more and more activity. We're always in the market to try and bring new and innovative content into the building. It's a big building, so not every band can fill it for sure, but where we can, we want to make sure this place is singing and working great for Scotland.
So infrastructure, stadium changes, professional teams, you would hope to have looked out onto the back pitches here at BT Murrayfield and see a stadium either close to completion, but certainly a spade in the ground. That's not happened so far for Edinburgh's new stadium. Can you give us an update on where that is?
Yeah, I think I described it as I'm developing grey hairs when I was asked this a few weeks ago, and my grey hairs are still coming, but not purely as a result of Edinburgh Rugby now. It's in a good place. We've finally got the support that we needed from all the various parties, so I expect to start digging into the turf in the next month or two, which is grand. It'll mean it'll be ready for action, all being well, I'm touching wood, by the beginning of the new season, and hopefully open even before then for some fixtures ahead of that, and that'll be amazing for Edinburgh. What we've said is we want to have a home that the Edinburgh Rugby deserve and they can be proud of, and that the team, that wonderful Edinburgh Rugby team, can play in front of a capacity sold out venue. So around 8,000 on the back pitches in a super facility, not dissimilar to Scotstoun, I think will be a massive shot in the arm, not just for the club but for rugby in general in the east coast of Scotland.
You mentioned Scotstoun through West. You've gone on record and talked about the development plans and the ambition to take the capacity up there. It's sold out now for the last 3 years. Can you give us an update on where that is and how quickly do you expect that to come about?
Yep, so doing any infrastructure build takes a bit of time, and you've got to make sure you work with all the various agencies and the partners. And of course, we're tenants of Glasgow City Council, Glasgow Life, their sports arm. And we're working hand in glove with them just now to try and develop some plans for taking the Scotstoun capacity up to around 12,000. So we're right in the middle of those discussions just now. We might even be able to share a bit of detail, including imagery, in the coming weeks. So we're in a good place. And it's a frustration in some respects that we're selling out when we can't bring in more young people to inspire them. So it's a big motivating factor for us right now. It's not easy doing infrastructure projects, but the support that we're getting from the city has been fantastic. So yeah, I would just say watch this space.
We covered Glasgow and Edinburgh there, Dominic. Another professional team that we have a stake in is Old Glory out in Washington. I know you've been out a couple of times to keep a close eye on how that's developing. Can you let us know what can we expect to see back here? How's that going to impact on anybody back here in Scotland looking over the water? And how are they progressing towards their first games? Yep,
I think the last time you and I spoke on the podcast, we spent a long time talking around Old Glory and what we thought the benefits might be. We're a good few months along since then, and we're seeing some of those benefits in action already. So we're really proud to take out the under-20s team to play over in Washington in a competitive fixture, which was fantastic. And it was supported by over 2,500 supporters. They had 4 other games as part of their exhibition season, and they averaged around 2,500 for every game. So from a standing start, that club is achieving some attendances which are not dissimilar to where we started with Glasgow Warriors a few years ago, as you'll remember, up at Firhill in Hughenden. So in a good place. Lots more to do with the club. We're hiring people just now, and we're keen to send some talent from Scotland over there to help support and run that club. So again, some news may be coming out in the next few days on that regard. But also behind the scenes, we want to send out some coaches. So we've got our eye on a few coaches that might go out there and support the development of the team. Under Andrew Douglas, the head coach, who we've now appointed up from New Zealand. So the team's taking shape, the off-field is taking shape, the venue at Catholic University is outstanding. It's a super setup. So yeah, we're in good shape, but as ever, it's a phony war until it actually starts, and it doesn't start until January, February next year. So lots of planning, lots of prep, but judges, I guess, by the end of the first season. And I suppose what does success look like for Scottish Rugby is that we've helped establish a new club in Washington. We've developed some really strong commercial links with some of the sponsors over there, who are also sponsors back here in Scotland. And thirdly, developing our people, whether that's players, getting them some game time, whether that's administrators heading across there to develop their skills in probably the greatest sports market in the world, or coaches getting an opportunity to develop their experience in a different setting and in a challenging setting. Because working in the US is challenging if you think about just even the logistics of travelling around the country and planning. So it will be a super opportunity for our players, our coaches, and our admin people to get some hands-on experience in a supermarket.
Well, Old Glory and Washington and the globalisation of Scottish rugby probably leads us nicely onto the overall strategy of Scottish rugby, and the globalisation being a big part of that. But how do you fit the balance in between growing a business, growing a successful business, and ensuring that the grassroots, the foundations of the game, are always protected and always continue to build on as well?
So that's foremost in our mind, is how do we keep making sure that we're able to fund all the things that we want to fund in grassroots rugby, because we're ambitious. We want the grassroots rugby to be thriving in Scotland and sustainable and developing the young players that ultimately take to the international pitch. To do that, we recognise that we operate in a relatively small market. Scotland economically is a small market. But we're really proud of what we've achieved over the last sort of few years in terms of growing the business and growing the income. So we've gone from around 28 million to this year over 60 million in terms of our turnover, and all that money gets reinvested back into rugby. But what we're seeing now, as a result of some of the globalisation stuff that we've been leading on, that we're bringing more money in from outside Scotland, whether that's through sponsors, whether that's through television deals, or whether that's through selling some of our merchandising internationally. So the growth internationally of our brand has been unbelievably successful in helping us drive value back into our coffers at Murrayfield to then distribute across the length and breadth of the country. So we've got to think globally. Whilst acting locally and supporting our local activities, we've got to think globally to bring the funds back in here and also make sure our brand, and the Scotland brand has never been stronger internationally, remains at the foremost of people's minds.
The growth of that brand means that the need, the want to make sure that we are doing as much as possible at a local community level, whether that's working with our charitable partners or outside agencies, to make sure that the values of rugby and Scottish rugby being a key stakeholder in those values are pushed out into the community, and people can actually see there's a tangible benefit for our community through Scottish rugby.
Well, it's a great point, and we never lose sight of the values. We're recording this, and above our heads are the values of the game in Scotland. So it's drilled into people from an early age when they get involved with rugby that there's something very special and something very unique about the respect and the leadership and the engagement and the enjoyment of our sport. And we take that very, very seriously. So all the decisions that we make as a board are seen through the prism of the culture of rugby and its values. And I think sometimes that's best evidenced by the actions of our supporters, actually, and the actions of our people. So when you come to a rugby game, as you know, you all sit around. There's no place that you can't sit. You sit alongside the opposition. You can have a beer. You can have a social couple of hours beforehand, social couple of hours after the game. And we do that in a really family-focused, respectful environment. So the last season we had almost 1 million people coming through our turnstiles, and I don't think we had a single arrest. That's a fantastic indication of where we are as a sport. It's a fantastic indication of where we are as a brand, and we don't take that lightly. So we want to make sure that everyone adheres to those sort of values, but importantly, that's a unique selling point. And brands and families love that about coming here to BT Murrayfield.
So how do Scottish rugby and rugby as a whole, how do we continue to make sure we're at the forefront of leading those discussions of potentially working with other sports, but also showing other sports our best foot forward?
Well, we want to be engaged as Scottish rugby in this national conversation. We think as a sport and as a business, as a big employer and as a big contributor to the economy, we will throw off well over £150 million a year in terms of economic impact to the city and to Scotland. We've got some messages that we want to land, and some of those messages that we want to land about Scotland are about being really proud about what we're achieving as a country, what we're proud about what we're achieving as a sporting organisation. And in fact, we had the First Minister in to see us yesterday, and we made that point to the First Minister where we said, look, you should be really proud, as she is, about what this team is going to do in the World Cup, but equally what our supporters do in terms of projecting things about Scotland when they come here to fill out these stadiums. often sometimes sport in Scotland gets a bit of a hard time. I think rugby is a beacon of positivity, and it's something which we are really proud of as I guess administrators in rugby, because our supporters are the best, absolutely the best in the world, and they demonstrate that through their actions.
Well, there's no better time to be that beacon of positivity as the whole world's eyes turn to rugby ahead of the World Cup in Japan. What does good look like for you, both on and off the park, as we head over for the biggest tournament in the world?
So good off the park is the one that's easier for me to comment on, I suppose. Off the park, we just want to make sure that we keep the audience in Scotland connected with the World Cup. It's in Japan, of course, so the time differences are a little bit clunky. So I think there'll be a lot of people getting up early to watch games and having breakfast by watching the Scotland games and the other games in our pool. So we want to make sure that Scottish rugby clubs, and I think there's about 45 clubs in Scotland that are signed up to the Your Game campaign, which is where clubs will be open to do activity to watch those sort of Scotland games. So we're really proud about that. Over in Japan, we always do business wherever we travel. And we've got Scotland House open for the Ireland game. We've got Scotland House open for the Japan game. We'll have around 300 guests, supporters and sponsors and partners in with us. We'll be doing a whole bunch of activity around that. So we do business around the World Cup for sure to drive value back into the coffers here in Edinburgh. So success to me looks like great experience in Scotland House, great experience with our sponsors and our partners, many of whom are heading out, and also a connection back here in Scotland. So the Scottish audience, both at rugby clubs and those that are watching from the comfort of their armchair, have a really positive experience about the World Cup and feel connected. On field, you wouldn't be surprised for me to say that I want to win every single game that we play in, every single game. And that's no different when you hit to a World Cup or you hit a Six Nations or you hit an Autumn Test. And we've assembled an outstanding squad. It was unveiled this week, and it is the toughest squad I think that we're sending to a World Cup for a long, long time. And there must have been some extraordinarily difficult selections made by the coaches. So we go with a lot of heart. Our first game against Ireland will be a firecracker of a game. I'm absolutely sure of that. But equally, Russia, Samoa, super challenging games. The one that I'm, in some respects, most looking forward to, but also most nervous about, actually, is Japan, because I was with the Japanese ambassador this week, and he was at pains to say what it means to the country of Japan to get to the last 8. And as a country, Japan are absolutely singularly focusing on targeting the Scotland-Japan game. It'll be an intimidating atmosphere. It'll be intense. It's the final game of our group, so all eyes lead to that. So that should be an absolute belter of a game, and one that we're really looking forward to. And I've got no doubt our team will do really well. But from an experience point of view, I'm quite sure fans here and fans over there will really enjoy that one.
Moving off field again, you talk rightly so about the short term, the fact that our fans will be over there for Scottish Rugby House. What about the long term? What about the legacy piece of the World Cup being in Japan from a Scottish rugby point of view? The ongoing relationships that we'll be looking to make sure we maintain.
Yep. So we started a relationship with Japanese rugby back in 2014, and then deepened that relationship with a long-term agreement with the city and prefecture of Nagasaki. So we've already embarked on a number of what we're describing as legacy campaigns over the last 3 or 4 years, sending players and coaches over to Nagasaki, receiving players and coaches over to Scotland, where we had the under-16s play games from Nagasaki in Scotland a couple of years ago. And then you know all about it. You led a group of under-16 kids over to Nagasaki last year. And that was an amazing story. I mean, a bunch of kids from probably the most hard-to-reach backgrounds in Scotland. Many of them wouldn't have been in a jumbo before. Many of them wouldn't have had passports. You've had to get them together and head across there and had a great experience. And the feedback that I got, I remember speaking to them before they left, and it was with their parents, and it was young boys that were heading off on a bit of an adventure. And it felt like when we met them again, when they came back as young adults. And that was something I think that rugby offers, the opportunity for young people to go and see a new culture, see a different environment, have a bit of fun, but also build those strong cultural links between Scotland and Japan. So those links that we've established, that we will bring to life during the course of the World Cup in Nagasaki, will continue for many, many years to come. And simple things, small things that we've created which are unique that we can do that others can't. Things like the Nagasaki tartan that is now being worn by the tourism officials across the city of Nagasaki is something which will be a bit of fun. And of course that Nagasaki tartan is embedded now in the national team kit for the World Cup. So I guess there'll be a long legacy, I'm quite sure, with Scotland and Japan following the World Cup.
Dominic, we've had quite a few questions in from our fans, some via Facebook, email and Twitter, and I'd like to share some with you. Our first one comes from Amanda Leach via Facebook, who talks about the fact that both Tony Blackhurst, Lindsay McMillan last week spoke about the changing demographic. We've mentioned that today, but there are only 3 items in the Scotland range, the merchandise range, 1 in the Glasgow range and 0 in the Edinburgh range. Now, she's spending an awful lot of money supporting Scottish rugby for pro level and national team level, but doesn't have the ability to buy the merchandise that she wants and needs to buy. Is that something that you can see us working with Macron to fix?
Yep, so we want to make sure that there's a deeper, more interesting range of female clothing, absolutely, for rugby. And Macron are working on that for us just now. We've given them some very clear guidance on what we expect going forward. We are motivated to make sure that we've got the broadest and deepest range, and I'm delighted that next season we will have a full female range coming from Macron for Glasgow, for Edinburgh and for Scotland. And we will look forward with interest to the feedback. Our supporters are wonderful about giving us ideas about developing the kit for future years, and we always welcome feedback. So once that range goes live, make sure you let us know how it's working out, and we'll deepen even further if we can.
Graham Mackin again via Facebook has come in asking a question about the season passes. So on season pass 1920, with only 4 games, he feels that the prices were, and I will quote him, off the scale. Can you give us a bit of background of where you feel the season passes offered value for money this season?
So again, it's a bit of a balancing act, making sure that we're able to price our tickets appropriately, our season passes appropriately versus the demand. And again, this year, very proud that we've managed to sell out our allocation of season passes. So I think we've sold up 25,000 season passes this year. So the demand has never been larger. And what we want to try and always do is add value back into those season passes. So different things that people will benefit from: access to meet the team, offers around the stadium. But we recognise that you coming to international rugby can be expensive, and we try and spread that across the whole year for people. And then secondly, that season pass doesn't just give you entry to the 80 minutes of rugby. It's into the stadium. And what we're seeing now is that people are spending hours and hours and hours around the stadium. So people will spend up to 6 hours enjoying the event and having a bit of fun, and which is fantastic. But the pricing of a season ticket or of any of our tickets is something we're constantly keeping under review. We think we've just about got it right. The fact that we're selling out, and the suggestion that we're getting 15 sellouts in a row would suggest that we're there, but we don't take it for granted. People are shelling out hard-earned cash to come and watch the national team, and we super respect that. So we be reassured that we try to make sure that we price it effectively.
From Gus Robb, we've talked a little bit today around what Scottish Rugby are doing back into the community, but his question is, do Scottish Rugby collectively know what the small clubs are doing to grow the levels at all, to grow the game at all levels?
So we've got a very active development department led by Sheila Begbie, who's our development director, and they are out and about all across Scotland, linking in with clubs, small and large, to understand what their challenges are, what the pressures are, and to hopefully assist and alleviate that, not just from a financial perspective, but from a support perspective. What can we do better? What can we do to assist? But we recognise that it is hard running clubs, small and large, and that the demand on people's time has probably never been greater. And the challenge of getting teams together can be really challenging. So what we want to do is, where there's opportunities for people to play games socially, make that happen. What we never want to do is games being cancelled because of a lack of number of players. We should be trying to encourage games to take place and be innovative around the rules and the laws to make sure people can fulfil fixtures. So much of rugby, and I grew up playing rugby, is about that social interaction. So much of it is around getting together in the clubhouse and sharing a drink or catching up with friends before and after the game. So we recognise it can be a challenge, and anything we can do, and Sheila's team is absolutely motivated to make sure that they're supported and as sustainable as they possibly can be. But that same challenge is around the world. And we are fortunate a little bit to see what happens in other unions, whether that's France or England or Wales or Ireland or over in the States. The challenge on participation levels, the challenge on local clubs is significant across the world. So there's a big discussion taking place at World Rugby level just now about what we can do in terms of intervening to try and make the game as easy for people to get involved with, but also to support those local clubs even more.
It strikes me that the ability to create local heroes is massively important. That, you know, I grew up, I wanted to play first 15 rugby for Alan Glenn's. And now a lot of people look at Stuart Hoggs and the Finn Russells and try and wonder how they can get there. And that's not going to happen for everybody. But the values of the game that we've talked about, it gives you an enormous amount. How important do you see Super 6 at potentially bridging that gap, of creating those local heroes, those opportunities for the kids coming through to look at something that's right in front of their eyes, learn from the players that are around about them, and ultimately grow the game?
So we absolutely want to have stars, and then the main men and women's national team in Scotland are doing an incredible job promoting the sport through their ambassadorial work. But equally for young people, in some respects, they don't necessarily know who the real stars are. They're just captivated by young, fit, active athletes in their local area having a bit of fun. So I'm quite sure the Super 6 clubs across Scotland will be positive beacons for the sport in developing and captivating young audiences. I remember we took the Scotland team bus to Ayrshire a few years ago, and a bunch of the male players came off the bus, which was great, and then the female players came off the bus. And the number of young females at the school that they went to running to those young females players was significant. And that just told me that whilst they didn't recognise them from the TV, they didn't recognise them from magazines, they knew that they were wearing the national team kit, they were representing their country, and that they were someone that they wanted to aspire towards. So the power of players, whether at local level or international level, is something we're really proud of. And part of the reason I think we've marketed as successfully as we have in recent years is we've tried to make our players, male and female, the centrepiece of a lot of our marketing, to try and make them recognised so that they're well known. For many years, this doesn't apply to you, Al, but many years, a number of our players wouldn't have been household names in their own household. So now I think we've got some household names, and you mentioned just a couple there. Our challenge is we want to make sure as many of the men and women of our national team of Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh Rugby, and now Super 6, are recognised in the communities across Scotland. And
we've seen that in the open sessions that are supported by Quality Meet Scotland. The attendance at those open sessions has been fantastic. The numbers have been well over 2,000, and they're coming out at times where it's not traditional time to watch rugby. It's not a Friday night or a Saturday to watch the guys train, and then the interaction they're getting back with those players is probably the reward for them turning up.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's something we've strived at over the last couple of years, to make sure our players are as accessible as we can possibly make them, without eating in too much to their high performance timetable. But supporters love connecting with the players love connecting with the supporters, and we've done so much of that around the country, whether it's Clydebank or Inverness or Aberdeen or down in the borders. We're always trying to make sure our players are as accessible, and we put on fan events, and we've had some challenges recently putting on fan events because they've been oversubscribed. What a lovely problem to have. And I guess that shows the power of the players and the power of the brand of rugby at the moment.
Raymond Stewart via Twitter would like to know when the third professional domestic team is coming.
No time soon, I'm afraid, Raymond. The cost of running a professional club is significant. And at the moment we're not there yet in terms of where even a third pro team might play. But to try and negate that a little bit, we've created the Super 6 layer to feed into Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we've also struck these partnerships with Nice in the south of France and Washington, Old Glory, to give our players an opportunity to have a bit of a pathway. And we've also got great relationships with a number of clubs down south. So whilst we can't afford, frankly, a third professional club, and there isn't anywhere for that third professional club to play in terms of a league, we've been innovative in trying to develop some really cool relationships.
Callum LaGrange would like to, it's a question but more of a bit of encouragement as well, would like to see us being, as we were last week when we went to Georgia, getting out and reaching out to countries that Tier 1 nations are not playing in. Can you see us, Scottish Rugby, doing more of that?
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation, for my sins sitting on the board of Rugby Europe, sort of European Rugby's governing body, and I had a conversation this morning about stopping referring to unions as Tier 1 and Tier 2. They're just countries. And we need to stop talking about them as tier 1 and tier 2. That is something we're very passionate about. We've always been passionate about going to developing rugby nations. So I think we've got an incredible track record, probably amongst the best in the world, actually. I saw a stat last week that we, as Scotland, have gone to more developing rugby nations than any country in the world, whether that be Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Romania, Georgia. And we'll keep doing that. It is utterly vital for us to grow the game. Whilst we often talk on this podcast about what's happening in Scotland, we are part of a global ecology. So we need that whole global rugby market to be growing. And if we can play our part playing games over in Tbilisi or over in Romania, we will keep doing that because it's something we're passionate about. And equally hosting them here. So when we host those tier 2 games or those developing nation games here, as we are tonight, there is an audience now. For many years, people used to complain, let's not host country X because there's no cash in it. People need to be less preoccupied about the cash and more focused on developing the game for the global game's benefit.
A question in from Fiona Brownlee via Facebook. She was wondering why fans have not had the opportunity to recognise and celebrate the career of Scotland's most capped player in Ross Ford. The Scotland-France game, she feels, was an opportunity for Ross to come out and say thank you to the fans and the fans to be able to acknowledge him. We
always want to recognise our top players, and no one has done more for Scottish rugby in many respects than Ross Ford. He's the most wonderful player, most wonderful bloke, and extremely humble. And if I share a story with you, we wanted to recognise Ross at the France game, and I asked him to take the ball out to the middle of the field before the teams came out. And Ross, being the humble guy that he is, he said it wasn't about him, it was about the team, and declined. And I think that shows the quality of that guy. We will make sure we find other ways to bring to life Ross's unbelievable contribution to Scottish rugby, because the supporters want to recognise that.
I'd like to thank all of the supporters for the questions you've sent in. We've covered off many of them in the conversations we had and then dug a bit deeper into some of them at the end. Dominic, thank you very much for your time, and let's hope for a fine Scottish victory tonight against Georgia.
Thanks, Al. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks to everyone for listening. I hope we answered the vast majority of the questions that you sent in, but if not, or if there's any additional questions, then please send them back in. Things are going to be a wee bit different for us over the next few weeks as we head out to Japan for the World Cup. We'll bring you a podcast from over there, giving you all the detail and all the insight you need as we look ahead to what will be an incredibly exciting tournament.